Well, the third year of the NBA Cup wraps up on Tuesday night. So I think now is a pretty good time to take stock of the NBA's in-season tournament, take a look at what's working, what's not, what the league hopes to improve on as this tournament moves forward. I want to discuss it in the context of a story that ran recently in The Athletic, a story that was critical of the NBA Cup, specifically the kind of wonky schedule that the Cup games create in the first 2 months of the season and the potential that this schedule has contributed to the rash of soft tissue injuries that the NBA has experienced. I bring this up because the league pushed back pretty hard on that article, issuing the kind of press release that you rarely see from the NBA, pointing out that the number of games that were played this season were almost identical to the number of games that were played last season, and that the injuries to star players were actually down 25% this year. It's not the kind of pushback you usually get from the NBA. The NBA, if they disagree with an article, they're far more likely to just call the reporter and hash it out with them. I know this because I've been on the receiving end of some of those phone calls, and not kind of a public rebuke like we saw this last week. Because from the NBA's perspective, the Cup is working. And some of the numbers that they've provided, back that up. I mean, the league, the viewership for the group play games topped 40 million this year. That's up 90% from last season. Now, you have to take into account that there's a new broadcast landscape now. NBC is part of the picture. That adds an over-the-top broadcast network. Amazon is part of the picture. That adds a global fire hose to the equation. So there's the usual caveats, but the numbers are pretty good. The regional sports network numbers, they're pretty good as well. They're up year over year from last year. And look, if you look statistically, these games are more competitive than some of the non-Cup games that are played. The number of clutch games that are played are higher in Cup games than they are in non-Cup games. And I think that's had that's proof that players and coaches, or at least evidence that players and coaches have embraced this. And we've heard some players talk about this during the semifinals and the finals. Paolo Banchero of the Orlando Magic, he said that these games do have a little bit of extra juice. Victor Wembanyama noted that it would be an accomplishment for his team to win the NBA Cup. So you're seeing better games, more viewership, and that's really what the NBA is after at this point. Because the bottom line is that the league, in creating this in-season tournament, was looking to give the early part of the season the kind of juice that the end of the season got with the play-in tournament. In an effort to curb tanking, the NBA created the play-in tournament, and by all measures, that has been a rousing success. It's different early in the season. Early in the season, you're not really playing for anything, but creating this European-style tournament in the first 2 months, it makes these games more impactful. And the first few months of the season, the NBA really spends them, playing in the shadows of college football and the NFL. If they can juice these games just a little bit, if they can make these games just a little bit more meaningful, that's going to help everybody. It's going to help their ratings. It's going to help their bottom line. It's going to give players a little bit more something to play for. And look, I've heard even Cup skeptics like Mike Brown and Jamal Mosley talked about this during the week. The ability to play in meaningful games like this in December, where there is kind of a finals-like atmosphere, where there is a stronger media presence, where you do learn, what it takes to play in more pressure-type situations early in the year. That can be a net positive for a team in the long term. So, look, the NBA is not done tweaking with this. It's still going to be changed in the years ahead. The biggest change coming next year is that the semifinals will be played on the higher seeded home floor. So you're not going to have a semifinals at a neutral site, just the finals. And I've even heard some chatter that you could have this finals taken away from a neutral site and eventually played on a home floor. So there are some tweaks still to come with the in-season tournament. But by all accounts, the NBA is happy with it. The numbers are pretty good. The competitiveness is good. And when you're talking about November, December basketball games, that's really all you're looking for.